Hey everyone, in this video, I'll show you how to set up IK constraints as well as animate the character. At the end of the video, we'll tie it all together with the state machine. There's a link to the source file in the video description if you'd like to follow along. With that being said, let's hop into it. So here's our character, and as you can see, I've already gone through the process of binding and weighting all of the bones and shapes, fixing the hierarchy, getting all the draw order correct. If you're curious about how I did that, make sure you look at the source file and you can go through and check all the weighting values and draw order and hierarchy and things like that. So to get this guy ready for animation, the last thing that I need to do is set up the IK constraints. Now what the IK constraints are going to allow us to do is control the legs of the character a lot easier. So right now, if we were to animate this character, we would have to go through and move each bone individually to achieve our poses. Now that'll take a little bit of extra time, and by setting up the IK, we can save ourselves some time later. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing that we're going to do is add some groups. Now these groups are going to be used as targets whenever we set up the constraints. So I'm just going to activate the group tool with the G key and then place some groups, one at the bottom of the leg and then one at the tip of the foot. I'll do that for the front and back leg like so. And then select all of my groups and change their style in the inspector to target. Now, the reason I'm changing the style to target is because if we have the group just set to the group style, if we nest in anything underneath the group, that group will disappear and we won't be able to select it on the stage. So by changing them to target, no matter what we nest underneath them, they'll be available for us to select directly on the stage. So that this makes for a good target for constraints or anything like that. Okay, so now that we have these set up, let me go ahead and rename these quickly. So we'll call this front leg control and front foot control. All right, and then we'll do the same with the back. So back leg control and back foot control. Okay. All right, and now the next thing that I'm going to do is nest the foot control under the leg control for both of them. So I'll put that there, put the back foot control under the back leg control, and you can see that the groups are still available for us to select on the stage. And then take both the leg controls and make them children of the root bone or the root group. All right, so now that we have all of our groups set up, now we can add the constraints. So for the legs, I'm going to start with the last bone in the chain, not the foot, but the last bone in the leg chain, and add a constraint and add an IK constraint, and then go into the IK constraint options and start configuring things. So the bone count, I'm going to increase to 2, and you can see that this bone is now highlighted in yellow, which means it's going to be, we'll be able to manipulate it with the constraint. And then we need to add a target. So I'm going to hit the target button here and select my front foot control or my front leg control. Now you can see this is working, but the knee is bending in the wrong direction. So we can fix that. Let's go back to the constraint, look at the constraint options, and invert the direction. Okay, and now when I move this control, the leg is bending in the right direction. All right, so now when we have the leg set up, let's get the foot set up. So I'm going to add another constraint to the foot bone here and configure it. I'm just going to select the target and set the front foot control as the target here. Now you can see that we get some foot articulation, which is nice. All right, I'm going to quickly do the same thing with the back leg here. Increase the bone count, set the target, and invert the direction. Test it out. That looks good. And then do the same thing with the foot. Add an IK constraint and target that front foot control. And there we go. So now it seems like we are set up and ready to start animating. So let's hop over to animate mode and get this guy moving. So here we are in animate mode, and the two animations that we're going to be creating are a run cycle and a jump animation. So let's start with the run cycle. So I know that it's going to be a looping animation, so what I'm going to do is change my playback type from one shot to loop so that the playback loops, and then I'm going to start creating some keys. Now, the way I'm going to do this, it's probably different for everyone, but the way I like to start is getting the character bouncing and then using that bouncing to get the timing right for the legs. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to select the hip bone. As you can see, when I move the hip bone, the knees bend and the character stays in the same spot, which is another benefit of adding those IK constraints. So I'm going to pose the character up and then move the playhead forward, pose them in the down position, and then duplicate that first key and paste it at the halfway mark. So that's one part of our loop. And then I'm going to copy all of these keys and paste them again to make the loop go all the way across the timeline. Okay, so there's the start of our animation. Let's get some easing added to these keys. I'm going to use the cubic easing for right now and then customize it a little bit to get the bounce looking exactly how we want it. So when the character's in the up position, I want to give it a little more ease in so that the character stays in the air just a little bit longer. Like so. And then when they come off the ground, just going to kind of have it spring off the ground. So take a little bit of that ease in out, and then we'll see what that looks like. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to copy the curves here and paste them on the similar keys. Like this. Okay, so now that I have my my up and down motion figured out, I'm going to start animating one of the legs. Now, you can do both of the legs, but for me, it's too much movement going on at the same time. So I like to focus on one leg and then add in the next one. Okay, so I'll start with the front leg here and get the poses right. So when he's up, I'll have this leg position here as if it just pushed off the ground. And then on the next, on the down position here, I know it's going to be passing in front of the character, like so. And then it's going to kick out front, like that. And then it's going to catch the character. And then return to the original position. So I just copy the first keys here, paste it at the end, and then let's take a look at that. Okay, so the poses are right, but the motion's not quite there. So let's work on the front leg control first, and then we'll get the foot looking right. So I'm going to expand the front leg control keys so that I can see what's going on. And I'm going to start by looking at the X values first. So if I think about this in terms of, like I said, the X, this is the leftmost X position here at the very beginning. And this is the rightmost X position. So I can probably remove this center key here and get a nice smooth swing. This sort of limits the amount of control I can get by just using easing. So I'm going to remove both of these X keys because it's just, I mean, on the X axis, it's just swinging back and forth. So that's what our keys are doing here now. And I'll just control the rest of it with easing. So let me apply cubic to all the X keys. And then we'll take a look and try and get this looking a little bit better. Okay, so on the X-axis, the motion's a little better. Let me grab both of these keys, give them a little more ease in. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now let's focus on the Y values. So here, I kind of want this to swing upwards a little more. I'm going to remove this X key because it added one. Okay, so it's going up. Up. All right, that looks good. And then it needs to come down. Needs to stay on the ground a little bit longer here. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then I'll go ahead and just apply cubic to the rest of my keys. See what that looks like. Okay, it looks pretty good, but it seems like the foot isn't quite working right. So let's work on that next. So let me open up the foot control. And I'm just going to go ahead and apply cubic to everything because I know I'm going to be using the easing to get that foot looking right. So here is about where I saw the problem. Actually, just by adding that cubic curve makes it look a little bit better. Let me add some ease in on this. Keeps that foot nice and straight until it kicks off the ground. Okay, so the front leg looks good now. Let's move on and pose the back leg. So we'll start at the beginning of the timeline, and the legs are going to be in opposite poses. So when it's down, now this foot is going to catch the character. I need to get that toe down. Kick this back leg out, like so. All right. Create a passing position, like so. And then return it to the original position. Now, there's nothing wrong with using a run cycle reference or walk cycle reference, whatever you need to do. It'll really help you out with creating these poses here. Okay, so the character looks pretty good, but let's go in like we did before with the front leg and mess with the back leg control first. So I'm going to remove these middle X keys again, because remember that leg is just on the X axis swinging back and forth. I'm going to give it a little bit of extra ease in here. Take a look, see what that looks like. All right, the X looks good. Let's focus on the Y. Okay, give this a little bit of extra ease in. Keep that foot on the ground just a little bit longer. Okay, now let's take a look at that. That looks pretty good. Yep, because it's actually coming up here. I nailed that pose that time. Okay, so let's get the foot looking right. And once again, it's these keys right here that need a little bit of extra ease in just to keep it flat for a little bit longer before it kicks like that. Okay, so now the legs look pretty good. I think we can move on and start getting the rest of the character moving. So let's start with the arms. I'll start with this front arm, and we need to pose it in the opposite direction of this front leg here. So we'll curl it up forward like so, and then move to the center of the timeline, because that arm is going to swing back and forth, but it doesn't need this middle key here. So we'll just go to the middle of the timeline and swing the arm back like so. And then copy the original pose, the first pose that we created for the arm, and paste it at the end. Oops. Like that. And then I'm just going to apply cubic easing to all of it. All right, so the front arm looks good. Now let's get the back arm. So it needs to swing in the opposite direction of the front arm. Swing it back like this. All right, go to the middle of the timeline, bring it forward, and then we'll copy those original keys and post them at the end of the timeline, or paste them at the end of the timeline like so, and give it all cubic easing. Okay, so that looks pretty good. The next thing that we can do is animate the hips, chest, and head, and we'll use the same exact thing here. So I'm just going to select all of them, all of those bones, pose the character here. Now on this one, unlike the arms, the character's body is going to bounce whenever it hits the ground and then reset whenever it gets back up into the air. So we'll go to where the character hits the ground, about right here, lean the character forward, and then go back to the up position. And then I need to expose the keys for the hips, because remember, there's position keys here, and I just want the rotation keys. So I'll hold shift. So I'll select this, hold shift, and select the first keys for the chest and head. Copy and paste those. And then we'll copy all of the keys that we've set there for the body bones and paste them, and that completes the loop. And then I'll select all of those and apply cubic easing like that. All right, so let's preview it, and it looks pretty good, but what we can do to make the motion look even better is offset the keys a little bit so that all of the bones aren't getting to the next pose at the same time. and that'll make the motion look a little bit better. So to do that, we'll extend our timeline. I'll give myself an extra second. Enable the work area and center that work area on the timeline. All right. And then select all the keys and center those on the work area like so. All right, let's start with the arms first because these are going to be the easiest. Let's set some pre-keys. So I'm going to copy the last 2 keys for all of my arm bones and paste it at the beginning of the timeline. All right. So now what that's done is it's taken these keys, put them at the beginning of the timeline, and spaced them the same distance from here to here as they are from here to here. So now we can actually drag some of these keys forward, and the interpolation will be correct, and we won't get any hitching with our animation. So let's start with the front arm first. So because the shoulder is the first bone in the chain to start moving, we don't need to move it. So let's start with the bicep, forearm, and hand. Let me select all those. And then drag them forward one at a time like this. All right, and I'll do that on the back arm as well. So skipping the shoulder, grabbing the bicep, forearm, and hand, and scooting. Ooh, I need to grab all of them like that, and then scoot them forward. Okay, then we can preview it. And you can see that that makes the arm swing look even better. So let's do the same thing with the body bones. So let me expose those really quickly, because remember, we only need to grab the rotation keys for the hips. And actually, we don't even need to set pre-keys for the hips because we're not going to move those. Remember, those are the first ones that move in the chain. So let's just do the chest and head. So I'll just select the last 2 keys for the chest and head. I'll paste those at the beginning of the timeline. And then you can see we actually have 2 keys pasted here, but this key, or these keys, are the same as these. So we want to drag these keys forward and overlap them like that. And then we can select all of the keys and drag them forward like so. And then we'll preview that animation. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think the last thing we need to do is get the shadow animated because we haven't done that yet. So let me grab the shadow here. I'll just select it in the hierarchy, make it easy to find. All right, so when the character's up, the shadow can be smaller. And actually, our origin's a little off here, so let me change that. I'm going to hit Y to activate freeze. Move the origin to the center of the shadow there, and then unfreeze. And now I'm going to animate it. So when it's up in the air, I'll shrink it. And when he's down on the ground, increase the size. And then just copy and paste these keys to make sure the loop is right. And then what we need to do is do our best to match the match the easing on the shadow keys to match the hips. So I think we gave this a little bit of extra ease in. And then this, I think we just gave it a little more spring like that. So removed some of the ease in. And then I'll just copy these and paste them on the keys that are identical, like so. And then we'll test it out and then make sure we like it. Okay, that looks pretty good, but the run cycle is a little slow. Now, instead of squashing all of our keys together, what we can do is go back to the go to this menu here, go to the playback speed, and increase the playback speed. So I'll just increase it to 1.5 times. And now the character actually looks like he's sprinting. So with the run cycle done, let's hop into the jump animation. And there's some things to consider as we're building that so that when we add it to the state machine, everything works together. So let's add that next. Okay, so I've added an additional animation here. And let me rename this jump. I also renamed the run animation so that we know which one is which when we go to set up the state machine. And what we need to do is we need to start the character in this pose here and finish the jumping animation in this pose so that when we mix the animations together, it has a good starting point and it's going to end on the same keys as this run animation. And it'll, like I said, make that the blending in the state machine work a lot better. So what I'm going to do is copy all of the first keys here for our character, like so. Oh, I didn't quite get them all. Okay, I think that's all of them. All right, I'm going to copy those and paste them to the start of the jump animation. And instead of having all the keys, the timing offset like that, I'm just going to drag all the keys back to the start of the timeline. I can delete this key right here. Okay, so now what we need to do is prepare the character for the jump. So we need to create that pose. So I'm going to start with the hips and get the character where I want it. So I'll start him down. All right, that'll probably be good. And then we want the character to leap into the air. So once again, I'll use the hips, leap the character. It's going to go higher than our run cycle up position. And then the character needs to come back down, hit the ground. Oop, that's too far. Probably about there. And then back to the original position. Just like so. All right, let's get the easing set on that. So I'm going to go down pretty quick. Okay, and then let's have them linger in the air just a tad bit longer. Let's actually move this key back slightly. Okay, put some cubic on this. Okay, so the hips look right. Now let's move on and set the keys for our legs. Now on this animation, I'll probably set keys for both legs, pose everything with both legs instead of just doing them one at a time. So I know that this leg needs to come down to catch the character, and it's going to be the one that pushes it off the ground. And then this leg is going to swing forward and kick out and give him a little bit of extra momentum to get higher in the air than the normal up position in the run cycle. Okay, it also needs to go forward. All right, get prepared to kick. And we're going to obviously need to match the easing there. So let me just do that. Okay. All right, so now when the character jumps up, let's kick this leg out. And then kick this one back. Like so. Okay, once again, the easing's not matching up there, which is why the legs are getting all crazy. All right, let's pose him where he comes down onto the ground. Like that. And let's see, what's this leg going to be doing? It's going to be in a passing position right here. Like so. And then we need to return him to the original position. So I'll select all of the control keys there, paste them here. And I'm just going to put that back on normal cubic curves. Okay, so the legs look okay. Time to fix the, let's start with easing, and then we can go back and change some keys here. So obviously these are moving too quickly. So let's try and just match it with the curves on the hip. Okay, I think we can probably get these legs moving quicker, but we'll fix that in a second. It looks a little bit better now. Let's just try the standard cubic curve on this. Actually, I'll just apply that across the board. See what it looks like. Okay, I want it to hold this pose for a little bit longer. Put some ease in on that. Okay, let's move to this next key here, and I think Once again, we're going too quickly into the next pose, so I'll give it a little bit more ease in. Okay. So now everything's sort of matching up. I don't want all of this to be happening at the same time. So let's start adjusting some of these, the timing in the leg here. I kind of want this leg to start moving a little bit sooner. Okay. That already looks a little bit better. You can see that the leg is coming up off the ground a little too fast there, that back leg. So let me actually... maybe I set a separate key here. Okay, that's not too bad. I'll also set another key for this to bring it upwards and push the foot back a little bit. See what that looks like. Okay, I don't like this motion here. It's a little bit smoother. Alright, let's see what we can do with the foot, or this front leg. I may try and move the X key off of there. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Okay. Let's maybe do the same thing with this one. Let's look at its X keys. Maybe remove that. You remove all those X keys too. Okay, so now that we've got the legs working and the jump looking okay, let's go through and animate the arms throughout this process. So from here to like here, you start dragging this arm back. Yep, just swing that arm back just a little bit. Bring this one forward. Like that. And then we'll swing the arms forward here. Or to their next position here. Make sure I'm setting keys for these shoulders. Didn't for that. Okay. And this actually needs a back shoulder key right here. Okay, let's see what this looks like. Okay, I think we can actually copy all of these arm keys and paste them here. Actually, we might not even need to do that. Let's select the original keys. So to bring it back to starting position. Let's see what that looks like. Maybe with a little bit of easing. I'm just going to put cubic on everything here for right now. Alright, that looks okay. Let's do the body now. So from here to here, he's going down. So let's get the character forward like that. And then when he jumps up in the air, again, back like so. And then return to the original position. Actually, it's going to hit the ground again, so we need another bounce. And then back to the original position, like so. All right, let's put some cubic curving on all this. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I think, oh, last thing, once again, let's animate the shadow. This is down here, increase the size, up. It's actually way smaller than jump or our running animation. And then let's return it to, well, we need to go here. The character comes down. And then back to the original size here. Put the interpolation on there. And let's try and match this up with the hips really quickly. Like this. Where's the other hips? Here we go. Alright, standard easing on that, which we have. Oh, that's a rotation key. Okay. Standard easing curve there. This is going back to the ground. Scoot that back a little bit. Increase this, and then I think we're good. Okay, now that we have both of our animations, let's tie them together with the state machine. So let's add a new state machine, and then drag the run and jump animations onto the graph. Now what we need to do is add some transitions so that the state machine knows which animations that it can jump between. So we'll add a transition between entry and run, and entry is just basically represents the play button. So the state machine will start here when we hit play, and right now we'll go straight to the run. So let's take a look at that, and you can see that that's exactly what it does. And now we need to be able to go between the run animation and the jump animation. And then we need to go back from the jump animation to the run animation. So I'll add another transition, and you can see we have a two-way transition now. Now when we play the state machine, you can see that the character is stuck. And that's because the state machine doesn't know which animation it should be playing. Should it be playing the run animation or jump animation? And it's just flip-flopping back and forth, which is why our character is stuck in the position that it is. Now what we can do is add some inputs and conditions to control when the state machine goes back and forth between the animations. So let's add an input. And we have a couple to choose from. We have a number, a Boolean, and a trigger. Now we don't need a number, but Boolean and trigger seem interesting. Now the difference in them is that a Boolean can hold a true or false value for long periods of time, and a trigger can only hold a true value for a split second. So triggers make for good inputs when we're trying to do something like go to a jump animation or play a shooting animation, something that happens over a very short period of time. So I'm going to choose a trigger and rename it jump, and then go to the transition between the run and jump animation. So this one right here. I'm going to add a condition and select the jump trigger, and then we can test the state machine again. So now you can see that the state machine is continuously playing run until we hit the jump trigger, and then we get a little bit of a hitch. So it's trying to play that jump animation, but you can see that it's not actually playing it. It's just playing it for a split second and then going back to the run animation. So what we need to do is add some duration and exit time. Now what duration is going to allow us to do is control the amount of mixing between the two animations, or how long it takes to mix between the two. And then the exit time will tell the state machine how much of the previous animation needs to play before transitioning. So let's just add a slight mixing value here between the run and jump animation. And then between the jump and run animation, let's enable exit time so we can tell the state machine to play all of the jump animation before going back to run. So we'll set this to 100%. Set the exit time to 100% and give it a slight mixing value. And now when we test the state machine, you can see that the jump animation plays in its entirety, but we still get a little hitch before it goes back to the run. Now let's go look at our jump animation and see if we can fix this. So I can see right now what the problem is. The state machine is trying to play the entire jump animation, And you can see we only have keys to 50F. And so there's 10 milliseconds here where there's no keys set, which is why there's that hitching going on. So let's shorten our timeline here down to 50F, just like that. Go back to the state machine and test it out. And now you can see it goes into the run animation a lot smoother. Now you can continue to tweak the duration and exit time values and try and get this character absolutely perfect, but that's going to be it for this video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or there's something in particular that you'd like to learn, feel free to leave a comment in the video and we'll try to address those as quickly as possible. If you did follow along with the tutorial, be sure to post your creation on the community because we'd love to see what you're working on. With that being said, thanks for joining us and we'll see you in the next one.